Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to be here today. My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us. And I am also simulcasting through the Wisdom Audio app. And I want to thank already our amazing listeners who have hopped on to the podcast to listen in. Welcome, welcome. Well, obviously, I have an amazing guest on today. And I will tell you, as I kind of mentioned before we went live to our listeners on Wisdom, Melissa is what I call a repeat offender, but in such a loving and caring way. She's just absolutely amazing. Without further ado, I want to welcome back to the Stories podcast, Melissa Miller. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Janice, it's been a long time. Good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. You know, Melissa was back on the Stories podcast on July 15th. So, gosh, quite a few months ago. And when you connect with certain people, I just want to say Melissa is one of those people who will forever stay ingrained in my head, meaning from a standpoint of, such inspiration, such love in her heart to serve others. Melissa, if you wouldn't mind just sharing, kind of catching us up a little bit, but sharing with our audience, where you are today.
Well, absolutely. Hey, everybody. I am still very actively busy in building my online business. I recently launched a podcast called the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast, which is live on Anchor and Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. I am so excited. I am still actively also working with building my one-on-one coaching program, Finding Your Balance. And also just that's on the business side. But then on the personal side, still just daily dealing with the ups and downs of IBS, hypothyroidism, and also obviously being a mom to a 3-year-old and caregiving for a spousal chronic illness of epilepsy with my husband.
Oh, wow. To say that you have a full plate really is an understatement.
Right. It's busy, it's chaotic, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
And that is beautiful on so many different levels. As you mentioned, your husband has a chronic illness, and when we met for our pre-chat during the summer before, obviously your first podcast, we connected on a personal level as well, because my son, he was actually recently just officially diagnosed with PTE, with a TBI, which is post-traumatic epilepsy with a traumatic brain injury, and has had 10 hospitalizations within an 11-month period. So we connected in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And you really inspired me to kind of lift myself up, because when someone is going through something so dramatic as that, it really takes so much from us. And of course we would be there from our family without a doubt, without hesitation. But on the personal side, the chaoticness we have to learn to live with. And that is what is very beautiful and inspiring about what you do. When your husband came down with this chronic illness, and epilepsy is very serious, as we both know.
Absolutely.
When did it occur to you, with going everything that you've been through, to start your own business? I know we briefly chatted about this in your first podcast.
Right. Really, my business was birthed out of necessity for finding something that could be flexible enough with my chaotic life. If I had been tied down to a traditional business online remote work where I had a traditional company, I would have deadlines to hit, and I would have to be at my computer X amount of hours, X amount of days of the week, with no freedom to really just drop everything as many times as I needed to throughout my day to take care of my family. And the other problem I was running into, even just logistically, was the type of training, certifications, degrees that they were having expectation wise when I was applying for X, Y, and Z position. So really building my own business was really the only way I could really figure out how to work from home, for one. So there was that piece. But also, I just have this love for serving others and serving people. And I see my work as divine, that the Lord has given it to me for a reason. And I see my business as a ministry. And the fact that younger caregiving moms who are thrust into caregiving when they don't expect it, when they still are just new moms or younger moms of kids under the age of 10, let's say, just 10 or younger, it could be older too, but you don't expect to care for your spouse under the age of 65. You're expecting to care for them once they hit 60, 65, after the kids are grown, left the house, are pursuing their own dreams and aspirations. And you're expecting those just usual life occurrences of the body breaking down and health issues starting to pop up. You don't expect an unexpected chronic illness that has you have no prior warning of in your spouse's medical history as a child or in their family tree. And that's exactly what happened to my family. So it's very important to me that I raise awareness for younger moms and advocate for younger moms who are thrust into this situation, because there really is not a lot of stuff on the market for this demographic. So I want to change that and be a trailblazer.
Oh, and indeed, beyond imagination, you are a trailblazer. But I love the fact, and I just want to kind of back up just a tad, that, everybody has a skill. And I just want to start out by saying that everybody has a skill that they were good at. And you really looked at your skills at that time as something that could benefit you, as you said, in your chaotic life.
Mm-hmm.
And you've niched it in such a way. And I'm curious to know, when chaotic things happen, how do you personally handle that?
I think I handle it a lot better now than I did before. When I started my journey, since I was clueless about epilepsy and chronic illness, it was something that I had not really dealt with too much in my healthcare career. I dealt with the elderly population, and I never had a seizure disorder patient in my career. So that was new. And then just navigating the unexpectedness of being a stay-at-home mom unexpectedly and creating a new routine, and just not having a guidebook, if you will, to really guide me along, or a mentor or a coach. So I think for me, this whole journey has been being thrust into the lion's den, so to speak, in terms of the unexpectedness of learning all these skills on your own, without a blueprint, without a guidebook, and just basically having to write my own guidebook. I think in terms of coping, I'm getting back to the basics, and it really is just with self-care. So physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. I would say last year was really focused on my gut health, since I do get a lot of gut problems with my digestive system related to my hypothyroidism, and now being diagnosed officially with IBS in last December. So getting back on track with my physical health was last year. This year has been dealing with the anger and the frustration and just the trauma of everything we've been through in the last 2 years. It definitely has caught up with me, and just still adjusting to being in a career where X amount of office hours or time spent on the biz does not necessarily equal a paycheck. It's not like when you're an online entrepreneur, it's way different. You are your own boss. You have to set your own expectations, and it takes time to bring in that revenue. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it's not like when you had a boss over you, a traditional boss in a brick and mortar business, where they say, do X, Y, and Z. And if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll get X amount of money every 2 weeks. It doesn't work that way. Now you can be very successful and it's fulfilling work, but that's the give and take of being an online entrepreneur. Is it's not easy money or fast money. And you have to really be in the mindset long-term to do it. I know for me, what has really helped has been really amping up on my spiritual self-care and spending intentional time every morning, 30 to 45 minutes a day, doing my prompt journaling, listen to my my Christian life coaches lessons, and then they have prompt questions, and focusing on that verse or verses for the day. That just really sets the tone for my day. And that's what keeps me aligned with the work that I'm doing. both personally as a mother and a caregiver and a wife and a daughter, since we do live with my dad, but also too with professionally as a coach and a mentor, because I see my work as divine and it's meant to be a blessing to somebody. Everything I do and say, everything I should say that we do and say, it does impact somebody somewhere. So are you being intentional with making sure that what you say and what you do is intentionally inspiring and giving people hope and active and advocating for change in some small way?
Wow. I love what you said about affording yourself that 30 to 45 minutes every morning to work on your spiritual health, so to speak. And having it ties into mind, like we know everything ties into mindset, but it really ties into your mindset, because you have to be point on in order to pivot so quickly, because your life is so chaotic. And the other thing I picked up from you, which I think, is so important, is that as an entrepreneur, we do set those expectations. And we need to afford and allow ourselves that opportunity to really care for ourselves in the midst of all the chaoticness. And that can be so difficult.
It can. Women and caregivers and moms, all three, we're notorious for putting ourselves on the back burner. It's so funny at the time that we're recording this, I actually was having a moment like that this morning. I launched this podcast. I have goals for Q4, obviously, for my business. And I have just really been waking up early. I had worked with my business coach to pull back my time with my office hours to where I would get up at 6 and then do my, and then with the idea of hopefully starting work about 7:30 to allow myself, if I get up at 6, half an hour, 20 minutes to wake up, get going, get the coffee going, do my devotional time, 30 to 45 minutes, and then dive into work, and then still cut off with my office hours initially at 11. So I still get 4 intentional hours, which is better than nothing. Some people can do less. And I've been waking up more like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and getting going. And it's just been, I think it's burned me out. And then this week has just been a little rough, where I've been having a little bit of a flare up of some other symptoms and just other issues, that happen. So with your health up and down throughout the month. So yeah, I just had a wake up call this morning I was talking with my productivity coach about this too, that, I need to take care of myself so I don't tap out and burn out, because when you tap out and burn out, you're no good to your partner. You're no good to your children. And if you are a mompreneur or an entrepreneur like you and I are, Janice, we certainly are not good to our clients and our communities. So, and I have a lot of responsibilities. I do co-coach in the business coaching group that I am being trained in. I do take what I do with my work and building my podcast and building my coaching business seriously. So I have to be on my A game, and you cannot be on your A game if you're dealing with an empty cup. It just does not work.
You are so right. And, it goes back to what we initially chatted about a few months ago, that when you're in the midst of craziness, in fact, on one of my many trips back and forth from Philly to Connecticut, when Ryan was officially diagnosed, I think I was there about 2 or 3 weeks ago. In any event, it occurred to me when I got home, it's like, as soon as I walked in the door, I was like, oh shit, like everything hit me again. Now I've been doing, and I share that freely because I think it's really important to know. It's like I had to step back for a few minutes. Well, actually it was a few hours, and just like sit and I listened to some spa music, and just to kind of calm my nerves down and, get back in the flow. Because when you're in that chaotic situation, I refer to it as the yo-yo effect. And
Oh yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah. You go up and down. Yeah, you're tied down. You're still tied to the situation. Like my husband's epilepsy will never go away. My chronic illnesses will never go away. I'm a mom for life. So those responsibilities and those challenges are going to be there for the rest of our lives. That's not going to go away. And I'm choosing to also be yo-yo to my business, because I do believe it's aligned and it's needed. But how do we control that yo-yo? Are we just like flinging it out controlling where you're throwing that yo-yo where it's not controlled and it just is going to whack you in the face if you're not careful? Or are you willing to be intentional with practicing and controlling how you release that yo-yo from your hand in a controlled way so you don't smack yourself in the face? It
Mhm.
really comes down to, first and foremost, your self-care. Physical, mental, emotional self-care. Now we're really conditioned to focus on the self-care, get enough sleep, get enough nutrition, get enough hydration, don't skip your wellness visits, get, 20 to 35 minutes of exercise or movement a day. Those are good. I'm not saying they're not bad, but the mental, emotional, and spiritual self-care, if there's anything that I've learned, is just as important because we're human beings in human bodies. We have emotions that need to be released. And if we don't, it's going to explode in a very unhealthy way. You're going to get angry. You're going to have resentment creep in, not just with the situation you're in, but you'll feel resentment as a mom, resentment as a caregiver, resentment with your business. And that's not a healthy workflow, both personally and professionally. I'm just going to throw that out there to the world that it just does not work. So you have to be intentional with those boundaries. What are you willing to, what can you get off your plate so you don't have that so much of a burden on your to-do list? What can you do to break down your to-do list to where it's less overwhelming? One of my big rule of thumbs is, because I'm not in the workforce, in the healthcare workforce anymore, where I'm guaranteed 2 days off. I can't do laundry, 5 or 6 loads of laundry on one given day, because I can't bet on that day is going to be an okay day. It might be a day where my husband has multiple seizures. So I'm done for the day and my husband has to rest and I need to take care of our little girl. So what I do instead to stay ahead is I keep an eye every morning on our hamper or laundry basket. And when it gets to be 3/4 to all the way full, I run a load. And if all I do is get it in the dryer for the rest of the day, at least I have clean clothes and that hamper's not overflowing and I'm not playing catch up when I'm dealing with also my little girl being a toddler or my husband having X amount of seizures and just feeling crummy and me needing to spend more time assessing and triaging and taking care of him. You know what I mean? I actually did this last night. We were getting ready for we're towards the end of the week. I take Saturday and Sunday off for self-care and to have some time and have a break. And I want to enjoy that. So last night I did a load of laundry. So you just do what you got to do.
You're absolutely correct. You do what you have to do. And I love that you use laundry as the example, but it really could be for anybody, whatever that something is, like, maybe it's, cleaning the house, or, those chores that maybe you've been wanting to, wipe down the countertops, whatever it is, you keep ahead of it. Now, on those days, do you find yourself, this may be kind of a weird type of question, but when you're pivoting so much, sometimes I feel, now they had these devices when we were little kids, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was like a magnet type of thing where you would like draw something on it, and then it has this little knob where you go and it clears.
Oh yes, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, my daughter has one actually, though she loves it. Yeah, I don't know what it's called. She calls it we call it like an etch a sketch, but it's with a magnet instead of where you can draw with it. Yeah, and yeah, sometimes it feels, I'm not going to lie, you will have those months. I'm going to just put it out there blindly. You're going to have those days where you're constantly just hitting that erase button on your etch a sketch. It's going to feel so frustrating because you're just trying to find a healthy balance. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. When we're dealing with chronic illness, when we're online entrepreneurs, we're trying to find that sweet spot that works for us to where we have a healthy balance with managing our personal life and our professional life, that we're having a healthy flow with just getting stuff done and getting our message out there and finding the sweet spot for what resonates with our clients and our customers and our communities. We're trying to find a healthy flow with how we can actually maintain our health without tapping out. And we're also balancing work time with personal time with our families. It's all tied together. It's all we're trying to do is try to find that healthy balance. But the problem is, and what drives me up the wall, is the one size fits all cookie cutter approaches. It doesn't work. Everybody's different. It's interesting. Like I mentioned before, I have a podcast now too. How I do my podcast content is totally different. It's not 100% like how Janice does it. And that's fine.
Right, right.
So you have to figure out your SOPs from the standpoint of an online entrepreneur. You have to write your SOPs, etc., that in a way that works for you and your time and what makes sense to your brain.
Right, because everybody's brain, we all know, is wired differently. And, the fact that you mentioned the podcast, and obviously I'm so excited for you starting your podcast, and congratulations. I just went through the process of, okay, redefining some SOPs because they no longer were serving me the way that I want them to. So, I go back to the drawing board and, write it out on a piece of paper. Then I go to Trello and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. And then I print out like a little copy just so that I can, kind of look at it over there. And now it makes so much sense. And I think it's really important to recognize those little pitfalls that kind of happen from day to day. And that can be, from your business life to your personal life, whatever it may be, but allowing yourself the opportunity to say, okay, well, this really isn't working for me. How can it work for me? And that can be difficult too. Have you found yourself with anything that maybe has come up recently that you're like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work out for me anymore? And what did you do to kind of work with that or redefine it?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Let's see here. Well, I'm finding with my task management, I'm figuring out that Google Calendar is definitely a big leverage point for me. I have used Trello, I have used Asana. There's so many different options out there. Okay. So you can be oversensitized, overwhelmed from so many resources. The best advice I ever had, or if you're an online entrepreneur like me, or even if you're just trying to use task management software to keep track of your said crazy life, is choosing something now does not mean it's a life and death sentence for later. You can change. So I started out, before I started my business, but I would keep a calendar. I would just keep a paper calendar and write everything down on it. But then when I got to the point where I was a business online entrepreneur and I learned how to, and my productivity coach taught me how to color code, I was like, hello, this is so much easier. So I started leveraging Google Calendar for keeping track of appointments, at least by time. And that helped for designating between personal appointments, meeting appointments, my husband's work schedule, and just having that flow of figuring out. I like to be alerted a day in advance. So I always set, like, for example, an alert went off on my phone yesterday for our call today at 12:30. So that way I would know, okay, 12:30, 24 hours from now, I have a call at 12:30. I just like to be in that flow of a day before reminder. Now that might drive some people crazy. So it obviously may not work for you, but I also need the repetitiveness. So I do have, I'm starting to start using a paper calendar again to combine that so I can see it multiple times. And I can also, with a planner, I have a full calendar where I write everything out for each month, but then I can go week by week and have those little lines where I just write little tasks and to-do lists. And I could do the same in Asana too, but there's that fine line of how much is too much. So you have to figure out what works for you. And I would say, if you're going to test or try anything, do it for 90 days. I tried doing everything automation wise in Airtable. It didn't work. I didn't like the way the calendar worked in there. It was just kind of small and I couldn't really do a lot of mini tasks. Whereas with Airtable, what I like to do is I figured out Airtable works really well for me for the back end, for like managing all my Google Docs, my forums for podcast guests, show notes, things like that. It works out great. In terms of planning out my content, I really prefer using Later, my social media, and then leveraging like Asana or Trello. I've really fallen in love with Trello of late for like doing stuff for doing stuff with planning things out and putting stuff over there. So, but everyone's different. So even if you don't have a business, Google Calendar can be great too, because you can do actual task reminders in there too. I could probably just do everything in Google Calendar if I wanted to. So,
Exactly.
I am looking at that too. So I'm trying to figure out what works for me, and there's nothing wrong with that.
That is so true. And, it goes back to what you were saying about, use something for at least 90 days. And please try to use the free version, because you don't want to go out and spend all this money on, oh, I need this, I need this. Use the free version as much as possible. And, everybody, like I'm a visual learner, and that's why Trello is perfect for me. But the other thing that I wanted to do is I kind of wanted a backup system for my to-do list.
Mhm.
And I was using Google, and I was finding that it wasn't user friendly to me for whatever reason. So one of my friends suggested to do it. So I'm like, well, I'm going to try it, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm not so sure that I'm sold on that. But, just a word of caution again, just, use something for at least 90 days if you can. Use the free version, and that will certainly, help everyone out as well. Now, obviously, you just started your podcast, but what is something maybe that's kind of still on your horizon? Like, do you have another big goal set for you or your business?
Um, well, my Finding Your Balance one-on-one coaching program, when I get enough clientele in there, I'm still working on it. The goal is to turn that into a mastermind. So I want to have a mastermind where the emphasis is on just the voice message one-on-one coaching. And it's more of a group. So we do group calls once a week or once a month. And then we do, and I do pods, of 6 women at a shop for a smaller intensive group coaching program. But for now, because my course, because I have those 2 offers in my head, and I figured out, and I tried launching them the beginning of this year separately, but it just didn't work because I don't really have too much clientele yet. So it doesn't make sense for me to pitch this big mastermind program when there's nobody in there. I haven't even sold out my course yet. So the idea here is to get people into my course where they get a month of free Boxer one-on-one voice message coaching to get a taste of what it's like to work with me. And then if they want more, they can supplement with more one-on-one coaching, per month. But the course in of itself is like a hub for be all end all. So like I break down my prompt method that I teach for getting organized as a spousal caregiver and a stay-at-home mom. There's 2 digital resources that are a medical organizer for managing your spouse's medical information. And then I have my daily checklist planner for a SED, if you prefer to write by hand, leveraging that, and just making that my signature offer, for now. And then marketing, just really building my contacts by doing my podcast.
Wow. And I know that's going to be so successful, and it's always so inspiring to chat with you. I just want to segue for a moment and just welcome again all our listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. And we have time for maybe one person to come up if you'd like to maybe ask Melissa a question or kind of, contribute to the conversation. We would love for you to come up, and we'll give it just a moment here. Melissa, your prompt method, and I'm going to make sure that those get in the show notes again, because I think that's really just so important for, people to know what that's all about, because it really can be so useful to any type of caregiver. It doesn't have to be a specific caregiver for epilepsy, but to apply it to their situation. Absolutely phenomenal. But what are other different ways that our viewers and listeners can get in contact with you?
Right now, the fastest, easiest way would probably to shoot me an email, Melissa Miller at tyrosupermom.com if you're interested in learning more. You could also go to my website, programs, melissamiller2011.com. And there I have a free support call. You can get a free 30-minute support call. And also just getting on the wait list for my Finding Your Balance program. That's going to be reopening on October 24th. I'm very excited about that. And then just binge watch. It's in the early stages. I'm only just starting to tape and get episodes up for season 1 because I'm doing them week by week. So follow me on Instagram, follow my YouTube channel, that Melissa Miller 2011, follow me on Anchor and Spotify. And that's where you can just stay tuned with the podcast, because I will be putting updates up there for other stuff as well, promo stuff, obviously, too, and the closing notes and everything else. But
Wow.
that's a good way to get to know me, and also just get a chance to access some amazing resources, because this season I really just am going with the passion for giving you guys resources that I never had when we were shut down by the pandemic. And when I was just dealing with trying to be a stay-at-home mom unexpectedly, and dealing with learning self-care and caregiving, it's so different when you're caregiving for somebody versus as a profession. And I just want to be a gateway as a coach and a mentor for you with resources, because I realize, like we've talked about in this conversation, everybody's different. So one thing that like, for example, I love prompt journaling, but that might not be a wellness hack that really works for you in managing your self-care. Maybe you need something more along the line of acupuncture for natural remedies, or essential oils, or maybe help advocating Medicare resources. I mean, these are all topics that I will be covering in season 1 with the guests that I have. I have so many different people that are going to be coming up on deck to join me on my podcast that I'm so excited about. And I know will give you access to some amazing resources that can help you with your journey, personally and professionally, because the knowledge is power. And I certainly want to make sure that you have access and are aware of other resources that I certainly, when I started, was clueless about. Heard about some things a little bit, but I wasn't really educated on it. So I want to bring experts. So the theme is bringing experts in to help to talk about on the topic of either motherhood, caregiving, or self-care, to give you a little nugget of extra resource and information to help you figure out what is a healthy balance, to help you find your healthy balance as a mom, as a caregiver, and also just prioritizing your self-care in a way that works for you in the season that you're in. Because even with self-care, it's going to change. Last year, I was focusing more on physical self-care. This year, it's more on spiritual. So obviously, last year, I was leveraging the healthcare system to find doctors to diagnose me and then get on the right medications. This year, it's leveraging some, my 2 Christian life coaches and the program that I've been with them for a year to amp up on my self-care spiritually, and really be intentional with my time with nurturing my relationship with the Lord. And that's fine. So maybe you need something like that. What is a something spiritual? Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's prayer. There's so many different methods and ways to manage your self-care, but it really comes down to you being curious and trying things and implementing things to figure out what realistically works for you, and finding your realistic, healthy balance.
Wow, that is so true. Finding that healthy balance, because knowledge is power. Melissa, I can't thank you enough. We're going to go ahead and do the closeout on wisdom, and then we'll do our official sign off of the podcast. I want to thank all my wisdom listeners. And if you have a story to share, it is that important. That means that someone else needs to hear your story to be inspired. Thank you all so much for being here today. And the blog post, the connection to the stories podcast, will be posted through Wisdom on my Truly Your VA website. So you'll be able to look at that. And if you would like to listen to the replay, of course, you can listen to it on here as well. Thank you, Wisdom. And we shall see you again real soon. Have a great weekend. Melissa, I can't thank you enough. Your story continues to spark that curiosity of inspiration. And what is better than, having these healthy conversations that are sometimes really hard to have, especially when you're that person that is going through what you have been through, and you are really adding that value to people's lives in such a beautiful way. I really just can't thank you enough for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back. It's a privilege to be a guest again, and hopefully you'll be coming on my podcast soon. I'd love to have you as a guest over there.
Wonderful. I would love that. Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. I, of course, will make sure that all of Melissa's contact information is in the show notes. Reach out to Melissa. She would love to help you. And as she mentioned, she does give a free 30-minute support call. It is so worth your time, and you will walk away with a better sense, and perhaps you might even hire her on the spot. Who knows? My name is Janice Malillo, the host of Stories That Inspire Us, and I am forever indebted and so grateful, always inspired by the amazing Melissa Miller. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And remember, if you have a story to share, somebody needs to be inspired by it. Please don't hesitate to contact me. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you so much. Bye for now.